pro video game controllers like the Xbox Elite controller, SCUF gaming line, and PlayStation DualSense Edge controller are luxury items by nature, and let's be clear from the start, usually double or triple the retail price of a standard first-party Xbox or PlayStation controller. The features they offer are great, but not necessary and not readily available. Multiplayer games. It has to come from within. In some cases, their features may provide some advantages over standard controllers, but the biggest benefit comes from getting all sorts of little conveniences and niceties, additional customization and accessibility options, and minor performance optimizations for those who are a little picky about the feel of several different game types. As someone who is picky about my feelings about different types of games, I've long held the Xbox Elite controller in high regard for both Xbox and PC gaming. Features like rear paddles, interchangeable analog stick caps and directional pads, and adjustable trigger stops are features I missed when using the stock controller. Ever since the Xbox Elite controller came out in 2019, I've been longing for an officially licensed PlayStation console, the platform I use more often. The PS5 DualSense Edge controller finally fulfills those wishes, and while I'm generally happy to finally have some pro controller capabilities for PlayStation games, it's not without some blatant monkey paw compromises. The DualSense Edge controller is impressive in more ways than one. It feels good in the hands, is beautifully structured, is lightweight, has the core professional features you need, and integrates perfectly with the PlayStation 5 operating system. However, there also seem to be some omissions and compromises, especially compared to what's available on the Xbox Elite controller. In the grand scheme of things, these may be relatively minor omissions, depending on what you personally find most valuable in such a controller. But you also have to consider that the DualSense Edge costs more than the Xbox Elite controller, and in some markets, significantly more. We take a quick look at the PS5 DualSense Edge wireless controller, learn about its capabilities, and discuss its many pros, cons, and uses. How much does the PS5 DualSense Edge wireless controller cost? MSRP for the PS5 DualSense Edge wireless controller is $200 US, £210, $340. For comparison, the price of the Xbox Elite controller, $180, £160, $150. What's in the box? Below is a list of all the components included with your DualSense Edge controller purchase. DualSense Edge wireless controller, USB braided cable, 2 standard caps, 2 tall bowler hats, 2 low dome hats, 2 half dome back buttons, 2 lever back button, house of plugins, a suitcase, distribution, analysis and comparison of functions. As a professional grade controller, the DualSense Edge offers all the conveniences and details that can make playing certain video games more fun and give you an advantage in certain scenarios. Here is a summary of its features. Dorsal scapula. Back paddles are the most obvious advantage of this type of controller. The buttons on the back of the controller can be programmed to take over the functions of any other button on the controller, face buttons, shoulder buttons, directional buttons, and so on. With the rear paddles, buttons that would normally require a thumb lift from the analog stick can be activated with the middle or ring finger, allowing for multiple actions at once. For example, jumping by rotating the viewpoint, or reloading your weapon while continuing to scan your surroundings. From an accessibility perspective, you may want to remap certain buttons to one side of the controller so you only have to use one hand to navigate the game. There are 2 rear buttons on the DualSense Edge that can be activated by an interchangeable grip paddle or a half-dome tip. For the most part, they work perfectly as intended. The mechanism that secures the rear vane is magnetized and has a toothed feed track that helps lock the component to be removed in most cases. The vane must be pulled out at an angle to remove. This is positive. This makes it difficult to accidentally pull out the paddle while waving it around, which is easy to do with the Xbox Elite controller, which uses a similar magnet system but is easier to pull out. However, the downside of the DualSense Edge is that it only has 2 back buttons compared to the Xbox Elite controller's 4. While this isn't much of a problem for personal use, it's something to consider for those with specific accessibility issues, as it offers fewer options for custom replays. Connection options, analog stick and D-pad. Unfortunately, the theme of fewer options also extends to the DualSense Edge's interchangeable analog sticks. The advantage of replacing analog stick caps is that users can adjust the height and shape of the stick to their personal preference. For example, different types of domes change the way you grip the joystick, while changing the height of the joystick can improve accuracy, or simply provide a more comfortable option for people with larger hands. The DualSense Edge comes with a pair of standard height curved analog caps that look like standard PS4 or PS5 controller caps. It also offers 2 pairs of domed concave hoods, one in standard height and one in extra height. These covers are similar to the ones you can find on PlayStation 3 controllers. If you like concave styles, you're in luck. However, it doesn't offer a curved analog head that increases height. As someone who really likes the curved style and also likes to use the height-increasing stick, this is a disappointing omission. In contrast, the Xbox Elite Controller Series 2 offers a wider variety of analog caps, with 2 different styles of curved caps, a concave cap and a curved cap that adds height. How much this can change depends on your personal preferences. Like the rear paddles, the DualSense Edge Swap has a more secure locking mechanism that relies on some force to lock the analog caps, rather than just magnets. Fortunately, this does not cause riots. The Edge also has the ability to completely remove each individual analog stick module, a very simple process. The front of the controller is actually its own faceplate, which is easily detached with a latch on the back of the controller, and each analog stick has a handle that lets you release it and lock it back in place. While this isn't an immediate benefit, at the time of writing there aren't any different types of analog sticks available for purchase, just a standard replacement. The idea is that if wear and tear does eventually occur, the analog sticks will be easy to buy. To use. To replace this raises questions about the long-term durability of each rod module, but we cannot comment definitively at this time. Compared to the Xbox Elite controller, the DualSense Edge analog sticks also lack the ability to physically adjust the tension on each analog stick for a tighter or looser resistance. It also lacks the ability to replace the directional pad with an 8-way option. Both have specific practical uses depending on the type of game you're playing. For example, 8-way pads are beneficial for fighting games, and loose analog sticks are perfect for sports games, and these glaring omissions from the PlayStation's first attempt might give you a taste of it when looking at the custom pros. Analog trigger stop. Like other Pro controllers, the DualSense Edge has the ability to customize the movement of the analog shoulder trigger buttons, essentially turning them into more responsive buttons, which is great for some games. Adjustments are made using a 3-way switch on the back of the controller near the shoulder buttons. At the flick of a switch, R2's trigger can change from a gas pedal feel to a pistol hair trigger. I found the DualSense Edge's switches to be a bit hard to reach when holding the controller. The Xbox Elite's controller switches are where your middle finger naturally rests, while the DualSense Edge places them a bit higher up, requiring a bit of a reach. We assume that this topic is common to reduce nervousness and unexpected changes, so your perception of these measures may vary depending on your personal preferences. Question: the DualSense Edge carrying case is another example of some great features, but also some weird compromises. The zip case itself is very durable, with an excellent clamshell design with very hard plastic coating on the top and bottom to protect the controller and accompanying accessories from impact damage. The Xbox Elite controller has a softer body than many. It's also a larger case, apparently because it has room for 2 other components, 1 extra analog flash module and 1 USB cable if you're into the extra option. The location of the stick's body, a small plastic unit designed to lock the USB cable to the controller to prevent accidental disconnection. Although we honestly think that in the event of an accidental release, it might be better for the plug to exit the controller rather than cause the PlayStation 5 to crash. However, the DualSense Edge solution seems unbeatable when it comes to charging the controller while it's stored in the case. To charge the DualSense Edge in the case, you first need to remove the hard Velcro flap on the back of the case that covers a large opening that provides direct access to the USB-C port. On the back of the controller, if you decide to open the zipper cover to remove the controller for gaming, you'll have to do an extra step: unplug the controller and plug it back in when you replace it. Compare that to how the Xbox Elite controller works. On the back of the case, there's a small rubber plug that's perfectly sized for the included USB-C cable, allowing it to connect to a small charging pad inside the case. Remove the cover and take out the Elite controller for gaming. All you have to do is lift it up. The controller connects to the charging dock with a lightweight magnet. Simply replace the controller and the case for storage and charging. The case is basically a charging stand. The tedious nature of charging is compounded when you factor in the DualSense Edge's short battery life of around 5 minutes 6 hours in our experience, which is shorter than a standard DualSense controller, changing the user interface and profile. But what the DualSense Edge lacks in physical and hardware-based offerings, it almost entirely makes up for in its excellent integration with the PS5's operating system and the way it handles controller responsive customization and controller profile management. After syncing your DualSense Edge with your PS5, a new layer of system-level notifications and settings will activate, allowing you to quickly and easily change settings and button assignments without looking down at the controller. The key is on the 2 dedicated function buttons below each analog stick on the DualSense Edge controller. Holding down one of these brings up a pop-up menu on the screen that shows some hotkeys that let you do things like adjust volume and game, chat sound balance, change profiles, or go directly in the controller customization menu. Once you're familiar with these shortcuts, you can minimize or close the pop-up menu entirely. It's a much more elegant solution than the Xbox Elite controller, which relies on physical buttons to change profiles and menus and apps to remap buttons and adjust the response of the analog stick. While we were impressed with the physical capabilities of the Edge's analog sticks, the way PlayStation showed off the capabilities of how the PS5 would actually respond to analog stick input was far more clear, user-friendly, and beginner-friendly than its Xbox counterpart. Concepts like acceleration and deadband are explained in practical terms, and the software has a number of good presets that also explain the usefulness of certain types of specific settings in terms of planning. In practice, this gives you the confidence to use these presets to create custom controller profiles for your favorite game genres, allowing you to make small adjustments to your liking very quickly and easily. Profile switching controlled by feature-based commands is also a stroke of genius. The downside to having a dedicated physical button to switch between controller profiles is that you have to look at the controller to make sure the setting is correct and try to remember which setting is in which slot. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and support my channel.